Hello everybody. Today we'll see a case of pneumonia. I'm Dr. Jitendra Kanchan Agrawal, practicing clinician last 25 years, having vast experience in treating various infectious cases as well as the diabetology. Let's see this case of pneumonia. Today's learning objective of this particular patient is to know how to diagnose and manage a case of pneumonia. What are the different risk factors of the pneumonia, as well as what are the practical points to prevent the complications of pneumonia, as well as how to use a particular antibiotic depending upon the possible etiology of pneumonia. Let's start with a case. This particular 65-year man living in a chawl. He earns money collecting scrap materials along the roadside and the trash dumpsters. So his work, he is collecting scrap material. That means he is not moving around in a healthy area. He states that he has been coughing up about 1/4 to half of a white sputum every morning past 12 years. What this suggests? This history suggests that possibly he is having chronic bronchitis. Last 15 days, about 15 days back, he noticed there is a sudden onset of fever with chills and shaking. There was a sweating, malaise, and chest pain, along with the shortness of breath, which was at rest. He also began coughing up rust-colored sputum that was thicker than what he produced every day. He admits he smokes almost 2 packs per day. That is 70 pack year smoking history. Occasionally he takes drink also, but he denies any history of orthopnea, ankle edema, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, weight loss, dysuria, wheezing, or hemoptysis. So his present history: cough production, back to rust color, breathlessness, associated chest pain. So what this indicates? So these symptoms, these are the key symptoms. There is a fever, sputum production, which is acute on chronic. There is shortness of breath along with the chest pain. These are the symptoms which strongly suggest that possibility of respiratory tract infection. It may be pneumonia, it may be secondary LRTI with COPD, or possibility of tuberculosis. The other things what he has already mentioned, there is no pedal edema or ankle edema, there is no orthopnea. That means there is no cor pulmonale. Although the history of chronic cough suggestive of chronic bronchitis, he doesn't have any cor pulmonale. Secondly, there is no GI symptoms, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and weight loss. So possibility of GI symptoms, GI related disease is not there. He doesn't have dysuria, he doesn't have any wheezing or hemoptysis. Possibility of underlying malignancy, at least on the basis of symptomatology, is not there, but still the malignancy can be there considering his age. So do you think that there is any history of place residence is important, and the source of income is also important? Now, how relevant it is? The fact that he lives in a chawl, which is thickly populated area, with low maintaining hygiene. He earns money from collecting scrap materials along the roadside, and that too trash dumpsters. That suggests he may not be working in a healthy area. He doesn't have good source of money, so probably nutritionally he is not be very sound. He may not be taking adequate nutrition, and his immune response is decreased. That makes him more prone for infections like pneumonia, tuberculosis. He also develop probably severe or overwhelming pneumonia. The possibility of this is very high in this patient. The risk factors which predispose to pneumonia. There are various risk factors, especially locally at pulmonary area, and systemic factors. So pulmonary factors, something like airway disease, where you get COPDs, asthma, cystic fibrosis, bronchiectasis, recurrent viral respiratory tract infections, obstructed bronchus because of foreign body, because of tumors. Then possibility of history of positive smoking, which is very important. Other factors which lead to pneumonia are poor cough. It is basically because of neuromuscular disease, where poor strength of coughing, emphysema, abdominal pain, or drug overdose like sedatives. Those patients who has reduced gag reflex and chances of aspiration are like those overdosed with the drugs, those alcohol abuse, patient with stroke, again neuromuscular disorders, patients who is on long bed rest. So here you have chances of aspiration is more because of poor gag. There are systemic factors. One is age, where this is more than 65 years. Patients with immunosuppression like leukemias, those on chemotherapies, HIV patients, those have undergone organ transplantations, chronic systemic disease like diabetes, cirrhotic patients, renal or hepatic failure patients. And there are some iatrogenic procedures which also can predispose to pneumonia, like intubations, abdominal surgeries, thoracic surgeries, patient on mechanical ventilation, patients in which there is use of humidifiers or aerosol generators, lack of hand washing, and lack of different sterile technique. So this all can predispose to pneumonia. There are, depending upon the different predisposing factor, we can anticipate possibility of bacterial infections or organisms, and we can start medicines accordingly. Before the culture report available, we can safely start this type of empirical antibiotic in these patients, so we can prevent morbidity as well as the mortality in these patients. Whenever a patient is having COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, chances of H1N influenza, Streptococcus pneumoniae, Legionella, Moraxella catarrhalis is very common. Those patients who has undergone seizures, chances of aspiration pneumonia is very high. Those who are immunocompromised host, possibility of gram-negative organisms and Legionella is more common. While alcoholic patients, Klebsiella pneumoniae, Streptococcus pneumoniae, H. influenza in that order. HIV patients, again, Streptococcus pneumoniae is very common. Drugs, like those who are drug addicts, they have right-sided bacterial endocarditis, especially Staphylococcus aureus. Elderly patients with comorbid conditions, they are more of chlamydia pneumonic patients. So considering the risk factors and the present etiology or comorbid conditions, we can anticipate and start treatment. Why smoking history is important? Our patient is having significant smoking history, and the chances, possibility that he turn into a cancer, lung cancer patient, possibility of COPD, which is already he is having, and of course the heart disease. COPD would increase the susceptibility of infection. His smoking history adds to his susceptibility to pneumonia, and since they reduce the defensive mechanisms of the lung, chances of getting infected is very high in this patient. Again, production of sputum. How does it relevant? Chronic sputum production is typical in patients of COPD because of poor clearance of secretions. It is very common that these patients get pneumonia. There are various definitions of pneumonia. Today we are seeing community acquired pneumonia. In subsequent presentations, we will have other type of nosocomial pneumonia with different cases. This is a community acquired pneumonia, CAP, an alveolar infection that develops in the patients in OPD setting or within 48 hours of admission to the hospital. That is definition of community acquired pneumonia. While nosocomial pneumonia, these are the hospital acquired pneumonia, ventilated patients, ventilation associated pneumonia, or healthcare associated pneumonia. So let's say hospital acquired pneumonia. By definition, the pneumonia occurring more than 48 hours of hospitalization and not incubating at the time of admission. While ventilator associated pneumonia that occurs after 48 hours of endotracheal intubation and mechanical ventilation. Healthcare associated pneumonia in patients with one or more of the following factors like multi-drug resistant bacteria, hospitalization for more than 2 days in acute care facilities within 90 days before infection, or residence in a nursing home or long-term care facility, or antibiotic therapy, chemotherapy or wound care within 30 days before current infection, or patient on hemodialysis at a hospital or a clinic, or home infusion of therapy or home wound care, or family member with infection due to MDR pathogen. So this is healthcare associated pneumonia. If you look at this, you will come to know that somehow this patient is exposed to the hospital or hospital area, and thereafter he acquired the infection. On physical examination, increased respiratory rate and use of accessory muscles of respirations are very common in these patients. Palpation may reveal increased or decreased tactile local parameters. Percussion note vary from dull to flat depending upon the consolidated lung or pleural fluid. Crackles, bronchial breath sounds, and possibility of pleural friction may be there, depends upon the pleuritis. Elderly patient who may initially display no onset or worsening confusion and few other manifestations in this patient. Severely ill patients who have septic shock secondary to CAP are hypotensive and may have evidence of organ failure. Now in our patient, he appears chronically ill, elderly patients, mild to moderate distress at the rest, alert, oriented in time and place, nearly normal intellect, with normal long-term memory than a short-term memory. So this indicates that probably CO2 retention is not there, he is not in CO2 sarcosis or type 2 respiratory failure. The vital sign shows he was running fever 102, he had tachycardia, tachypnea, the tissue was normal, his body weight was 64 and height was 152 centimeter. There was cyanosis on the lip and mouth. Trachea is central, mobile without any stridor or wheezing. Mild supraclavicular and cervical lymphadenopathy bilaterally is noted. No jugular vein distension. Test shows that EP diameter is large with decreased excursion noted on the right side with increased inspiratory effort, decreased resonance to the percussion, and increased vocal parameters on the right lower lip posteriorly. This indicates that the patient has barrel-shaped chest, emphysematous, plus increased tactile local parameters, reduced breath sounds, right lower lobe suggests that possibility of consolidation. Bronchial breathing sounds, right lower lobe posteriorly clear but decreased. Over entire left lung and right middle and upper lobes. Pleural friction rub heard the right lateral chest wall. So that pleural friction rub suggests that there is a possibility of pleuritis. The extremities were cool, moist, slightly dusky. Cyanosis noted. In fingertips, no clubbing or edema was noted. Pulses slightly diminished and symmetrical. So cool, moist, dusky extremities with cyanosis with reduced pulses symmetrically indicates the chronicity of the disease. So when you see a case of respiratory origin, you need to differentiate. Just we will enumerate all the clinical findings in various state of respiratory disease conditions There are various disorders. Few of them we'll discuss here, which is very common: consolidation, collapse, pleural effusion, interstitial fibrosis, pneumothorax, asthma, and COPD. So you see, in consolidation patient, the area affected, wall movements are reduced, percussion note is dull, breathing sounds are bronchial, while other sounds you get coarse crackles. Similarly, in collapse patients, the chest wall movement is reduced, percussion note is again dull, breath sounds are absent or bronchial, and no other sounds are heard because the lungs are collapsed in that particular area. Pleural effusion, again, the affected side chest wall movement is reduced, stony dull percussion note, as if you are percussing on the stone. Just experience that stony dullness. When you percuss note on the stone, you will feel the pain in the percussed finger. So that is called as stony dullness, right? Stony hard dullness. Breath sounds are reduced, and they may be rough, they may not be rough. Interstitial fibrosis, air entry reduced, chest wall movements reduced both sides. Percussion note may be normal, may be reduced. Vesicular or diminished breath sounds you can hear. And there are fine inspiratory crackles, very important. There's fine inspiratory crackles. You can put your hair near your ear and just move this hair in front of your ear. You will listen a sound that is called as crackles. It is similar like inspiratory crackles you can hear. You can do when you finish this particular presentation. Pneumothorax, reduced on affected side, normal or hyperresonant. Breath sounds are reduced, and other sounds are not heard on pneumothorax. Asthmatic patients or COPD patients, again both sides chest wall movements reduced. Percussion notes are usually normal. Sometimes you may get hyperresonant note. Vesicular, with prolonged expiration breath sounds you can see, and there is an expiratory wheeze in these patients of physical respiratory case of asthma and COPD. So this is a clinical presentations of various cases of pulmonary effusion. Now let's see the pathophysiology. First we'll go for pathology. There are 4 stages in a consolidation. First phase is a phase of congestion. Second is a phase of red hepatization. Third phase of gray hepatization. And fourth phase is a phase of resolution. So looking at first phase of congestion, where the lungs are heavy, they are boggy, and they are red. This is because of more and more blood supply to the lungs. So vascular engorgement, intra-alveolar fluid collection with few neutrophils, and there is presence of multiple bacteria in that, and you get a clinical picture of fever, cough, chest pain, bacteria, which can be seen in sputum. If you do X-ray at this stage, you may not get any clinical finding in the X-ray. So this X-ray may be normal in a stage of congestion. Then there is a phase of red hepatization that follows massive confluent exudation as neutrophils, RBCs, and fibrin fill the alveolar spaces. Examination shows that lobe is red, firm, airless, and there is a liver-like consistency. This is a pathological examination I am talking. So that's why they are looking like liver consistency, which is called as hepatization. The patient at this time has sputum along with the rusty sputum with dull note and increased tactile local phragmitis. X-ray may show congestion. There is a confluence. Plus, you can get signs of consolidation at this time, the X-ray. The phase of gray hepatization, the third phase, it follows a progressive disintegration of RBCs, persistence of a fibrinosuppurative exudate that results in change in the color to grayish brown, and at this stage, sputum becomes more mucopurulent, and there will be all signs of consolidation. Clinically, there is bronchial breathing, there is reduced heart sounds, the dull note, and you can get crepitations. In the final stage of resolution, exudate within the alveolar spaces is broken down by enzymatic digestion to produce granular semi-solid debris that is resorbed, ingested by macrophages, expectorated or organized by fibroblasts going into its fibrosis. Like these signs is a clinical improvement. Pleural fibrinous reactions due to the underlying inflammation in early stage of consolidation, and that leads to pleuritis, right? It may resolve or undergo organization, leaving fibrinous thickening or permanent adhesions in the pleura. Now in our patient, there was poor short-term memory, what we noted. What was the reason? Always remember, whenever the mental acuity is reduced, it's a sign of poor memory. This may be related to many of the adverse events like hypoxia, alcohol abuse, sepsis, or chronic condition. Short-term memory is usually affected more severely in any cerebral insult compared to long-term memory. What investigations you will do in these patients? Actually, complete blood count, blood culture, full chemistry profile, sputum or gram stain, culture and sensitivity, EBG and chest X-ray. This patient underwent investigations and CBC showed he had hemoglobin 10.4, total count WBC was normal, he had 60% segmented cells, 30% band, you see, 30% bands and 10% lymphocytes. His metabolic panel shows BUL was 68 and serum creatinine was 1.58. Reduced WBC count in the presence of infection is consistent with overwhelming infection. The differential count shows large number of immature neutrophils, 30% bands, that are not usually called into action unless the infection is severe. The hemoglobin is consistent with mild anemia. Leukocytosis usually seen in most of the cases of bacterial pneumonia. Acute bacterial infection stimulates bone marrow to increase the number of neutrophils in the circulation. And as the infection worsens, the more and more immature WBCs in the form of bands, they also increases. Leukopenia is also seen in severe bacterial pneumonia infection, that is overwhelming the immune system in patients with viral pneumonia. Normal WBC count is common with atypical pneumonias like Mycoplasma or non-bacterial pneumonias. EBG, his pH was 7.47, ACO2 was 32, PO2 was 44, and BICA was 23. The things you should see, in the mild to moderate cases where the acute alveolar hyperventilation with hypoxemia, this patient has got pH towards alkalosis 7.47. He has got ACO2 which is low, 35 to 45 should be the normal. And see the HCO3, it is 23, it is normal. But there is hypoxia, PO2 is 44, less than 60 is hypoxic. So acute alveolar hyperventilation with hypoxemia, which is called as acute respiratory alkalosis, you will get everything, PaCO2, HCO3, PO2, PO2 and SaO2 are low, but pH is reached. Right? HCO3 is low, but maybe normal, low normal you can say, as in this case. Severe stage, acute ventilatory failure with hypoxemia is seen. It is called as acute respiratory acidosis, where you get low pH, but PaCO2 is increased, bicarb is increased, while oxygen saturation and oxygen pressure in the arterial oxygen pressure is reduced, PaO2 is reduced, SaO2 reduced. It is acute ventilatory failure with hypoxemia. This patient chest X-ray showed at right middle lobe consolidation. Here you can see lung is hyperinflated. You can see the position of the diaphragm, of hyperlucency, hyperventilated lung. Right border of heart is not clearly visible, like what you see left heart border. Right border cannot be visualized. And the diaphragm is in the ninth intercostal space. Right diaphragm. This suggests that there is an emphysema. This haziness with air bronchogram is suggestive of pneumonia, middle lobe pneumonia. May show lobar consolidation, interstitial infiltrates, cavities are associated pleural effusions. Occasionally, etiologic diagnosis can be made on the basis of chest X-ray. Whenever you have a cavitating lesion in the upper zone, quite possibly it is tuberculosis, you can see the pneumotoceles that suggest pneumonia. Sometimes you get air fluid level suggesting a pulmonary abscess, and it may be multiple. Often it is polymicrobial. In an immunocompromised patient, a crescent meniscus, that is a sign of aspergillosis in the cavity, can be seen in patients on chest X-ray. So chest X-ray also helpful for the diagnosis of various conditions on the basis of, in case of scenario of pneumonia consolidation. So X-ray will show volume loss, will show pleural effusion, possibility of adenopathy, cavitations, multilobar involvement, and progression to pneumonia while on antibiotics. So whenever you see different cases presented with the respiratory symptoms, you have to interpret chest X-ray, although radiologists will improve. But in the nowadays high technology in radiology, more belief in CT scan, MRI, HRCTs. Conventional radiology is going back, and very few of them are interested in chest radiographs reporting. So you see an X-ray, make an attempt to see the X-ray. Don't rely on the printed reports. There is a volume loss that implies endobronchial obstruction like foreign bodies, endotropical abnormalities or tumor. The patient may need bronchoscopy and isolation in this particular patient. Pleural effusion, you will see costophrenic angle. Obliteration of that will be seen. You ask for lateral X-rays, lateral decubitus review, and the fluid level out of more than 10 millimeter, do thoracocentesis. If the clinical condition deteriorates, cap the fluid even if it less than 10 millimeters. So pleural effusion you can diagnose the chest X-ray. Look at the adenopathy, hilar and mediastinal lymphadenopathy, adenopathy. This is significant in patient of atypical pneumonia. Suspicion of organisms like tuberculosis or fungus is very high. Isolate the patient and do an aggressive workup in these particular cases. If you see cavity, especially community acquired pneumonias, it rarely cavitate except in patient with Staphylococcus aureus. When cavitation is seen, isolate the patient. Suspect tuberculosis, possibility of aspiration, and a fungal infection. If you see multilobar involvement on the chest X-ray, more than 2 lobes are involved, this signifies possibility of high mortality in these pneumonic patients. Progression of pneumonia while on antibiotics, especially patients who have already been treated and they are not getting clinical improvement or worsening of the condition, suspect possibility of tuberculosis, fungal growth, pneumocystitis carinii, PCV infection, or Legionella in these particular patients. Apart from the doses of antibiotics, some technical errors and all. Sputum examination in this patient showed that positive gram-positive cocci, and there were many WBCs but no epithelial stains are seen. The common pathology when you see a Streptococcus pneumonia, 10 to 15% of patients with CAP have this particular presentation, and the number is declining because of pneumococcal vaccination and reduced smoking in patients. Influenza, 3 to 10% cases, then Legionella pneumophilia, to 8% of cases of CAP. You can get Klebsiella, Pseudomonas, E. coli, then Staphylococcal aureus, 3 to 5% of the cases. Atypical organisms like Mycoplasma, Chlamydia, Legionella can be implicated up to 40% cases together. Influenza, one of the most important predisposing factor for S. pneumoniae and S. aureus. Gram-negative organisms can cause more than 80% of nosocomial infection. Whenever you see a culture growth of gram-negative bacteria or organisms in a hospitalized patient, possibility of nosocomial infection to be ruled out. Is ruled out actually. So in patients with such kind, you have to do sputum culture, and few patients may need high resolution CT scan. Occasionally patients have only opacities in symptoms and signs suggestive of pneumonia. There are no X-ray findings, chest X-ray findings, right? So more likely the chest X-ray to show bilateral involvement, effusion, or emphysema or lymphadenopathy. So HRCT is very important. Sometimes you get very small pneumonias with pleuritis, which may not be visible on the X-ray, but HRCT can evaluate that and can lead us for the presentation of consideration and management accordingly. Considering this, now should we admit this patient or should we treat him on OPD basis? If you want to admit, should we admit him to the ward or we should keep him in the ICU? Let us discuss about what are the different criteria for the admission. Management of patient who is admitted in the hospital, they are based on CURB 65 score. This score has 1 point each for confusion, where the mental score less than 8 or neo disorientation, PA level more than 7 millimole, that includes use of laboratory test, respiratory rate more than 30, those patients having blood pressure less than systolic less than 90, diastolic less than 60, and age more than 65 years. So this is CURB 65, CURB 65. Those patients score 0 to 1. These patients are likely suitable for home treatment. Those patients score around 2. They are hospitalized for short period or they are hospital supervised treated at OPD basis. But those who are having score more than 3, chances of 57% as mortality. These patients are hospitalized because this indicates severe pneumonia. They are assessed in ICU. If the score is more than 4, they are definitely admitted in ICU. Patient should be admitted to the ICU because there is a shock and he had high risk for respiratory failure. Considering that there is age 65, 1 point, urea more than 7, again 1 point, and there is tachypnea, so there is 3 points. There is also an evidence via WBC which is low that pneumonia is having overwhelming immune system. How should we proceed? Patient should be started with IV antibiotics, either first generation cephalosporins or penicillin derivative. Respiratory care should be started with O2, FiO2 0.4 to 0.5 and titrate the FiO2 to SaO2 of approximately 90%. After this, once the saturation is stable, follow EBG to confirm his ventilatory acid base and oxygen status. IV fluids required to maintain his hydration. As IV fluids are needed to maintain hydration, as sepsis often decreases vascular flow and causes a relative hypovolemia. Sepsis-related vascular relaxation can result in profound hypotension that may require a large amount of fluids. Somebody who is seeing the patient in his OPD with possibility of consolidation, having hypotension, the first foremost thing he should do, saturation. If it is falling down, he is needing ICU admission. Start IV fluids and send him to the center. Central venous pressure monitoring would be important if hypotension were to develop. Now, what are the antibiotic treatment empirically we can give to the patient? Previously healthy patient without any history of antibiotics in last 3 months should be treated with macrolide like clarithromycin 500 mg BD or azithromycin 500 mg once a day or doxycycline 100 mg twice a day. Those patients having comorbid condition or those patients who are having antibiotic last 3 months, select different class of antibiotic than what he has received. Respiratory quinolones, that is moxifloxacin, gemifloxacin or levofloxacin should be given. The doses are given. Lactam preferred high dose amoxicillin 1 gram 3 times a day or amoxiclav 2 grams twice a day. Alternatives, you can use ceftriaxone, cefodoxime, ceforaxime plus a macrolide. In the region with high rate of high level of pneumococcal macrolide resistance, consider alternatives what we have seen in patients with comorbid conditions. So this is an empirical treatment you can start in a community acquired patient. On the basis of PD, if the patient is previously healthy, has received antibiotic recently, if there is no history of receiving antibiotic, consider macrolide or doxycycline. If somebody has received antibiotic recently, start respiratory quinolones or advanced macrolide plus high dose amoxi or amoxiclav. Somebody who has got significant comorbidities, if you want to treat antibiotic basis, recent antibiotic therapy is not given to this patient, you can safely give macrolide or respiratory quinolones. If he has received recently an antibiotic, start respiratory quinolones alone or advanced macrolide plus beta-lactam. If there is a possibility of aspiration you noticed, then amoxiclav or clindamycin to be given. Those patients having influenza with secondary bacterial infection, beta-lactam or respiratory quinolones are important. So there are 4 classes. One is macrolide, second respiratory quinolones, third lactams or beta-lactams, and fourth doxycycline. So if you see these 4 antibiotics, 4 class of antibiotics, and keep it in your OPD, you can treat these patients on the OPD basis, those who do not require any admission according to the criteria. In patients who are hospitalized, they are not admitted in the ICU. In such patients, respiratory quinolones, oxyfloxacin, gemifloxacin or levofloxacin can be given. Again, lactam like cefotaxime, ceftriaxone, ampicillin, ertapenem plus macrolide, either erythromycin or azithromycin or IV azithromycin 1 gram once and then 500 mg OD can be given. Beta-lactam like cefotaxime, ceftriaxone, amphisulf along with azithromycin or fluoroquinolones can also be given. These are the patients who are hospitalized but not in the ICU. In summary of this, patient admitted in the medical ward without any recent medical history of antibiotic therapy, respiratory quinolones or advanced macrolide plus beta-lactam. While those patients with recent history of recent antibiotic therapy can be started with advanced macrolide plus beta-lactam or respiratory quinones depending upon the recent antibiotic is received. Those patients with intensive care unit, possibility of Pseudomonas infection, there is no possibility. You can start with beta-lactam plus advanced macrolide or respiratory quinolones. If you have beta-lactam allergy, you can start respiratory fluoroquinolones with or without clindamycin. Possibility of Pseudomonas infection, anti-pseudomonal agent plus ciprofloxacin or anti-pseudomonal agent plus aminoglycoside plus respiratory fluoroquinolones or macrolide. If again beta-lactam allergic, aztreonam with levofloxacin or aztreonam with oxyfloxacin or gemifloxacin, etifloxacin, with or without aminoglycosides we can give. Those patients who has admitted in nursing home, you can start with respiratory fluoroquinolones alone or amoxiclav with advanced macrolides. So this is an empiric therapy what we learned. Coming back to our patient who is admitted in the ICU with IV fluids and ceftriaxone, oxygen was started with 40%, cardiac monitoring was done and ABG repeated after 30 minutes. That shows there was pH 7.47, PaCO2 33, PaO2 53, and he has tachycardia, tachypnea, fever although come down to 100.8, blood pressure was normal, complaints of increased dyspnea and cough. There was no change noted in the right-sided pleural pain. Time plus sample is sent for the culture. Now with this status, EBG has not changed much than the initial one. There is a respiratory alkalosis with moderate hypoxemia still there. PaCO2, you see simple mismatching causing hypoxia, usually improves with the supplemented oxygen, right? When you see a shunt, that is a likely explanation. The PaCO2 increases little or no change in response to increased FiO2. Pneumonia can lead to consolidation, which prevents air from entering into the alveoli, coming in contact with the blood, the pulmonary capillaries. An increase in FiO2 will not increase PaO2 in these particular patients significantly unless the affected region is participating in gas exchange. PaCO2 is not lower in this case because of the presence of COPD and high work of breathing. The large physiologic dead space is associated with COPD, make it more difficult for the patient to increase ventilation. That is enough to reduce PaCO2 more than ABG goes down. So, considering this, looking at this patient's condition appears to be deteriorating. Fever will increase his metabolic rate, which will require increased ventilation and blood flow, putting additional stress on the heart and lungs. Most patients do not tolerate respiratory rates greater than 30 minutes per minute for a prolonged period of time, and because of that increasing heart rate, respiratory rate, increasing respiratory rate is an evidence of respiratory distress. Patient is experiencing increased dyspnea. It also suggests that probably he is tiring and the brink of respiratory failure and is on the brink of respiratory failure. How will you proceed? naturally will increase the FiO2 as he is having hypoxemia to 60 to 80%. PaO2 we should get. Looking at this patient's poor response, initial increases in the FiO2 and deteriorating vital signs, will probably may need intubation and mechanical ventilation to ensure adequate gas exchange. Oxygen-induced hypoventilation is not a concern in this case because the patient's previous EVGs will reduce PaCO2. Oxygen, if you give adequate oxygen, it will never sacrifice. Adequate oxygenation should never be sacrificed to avoid an increase in PaCO2 even when CO2 is already elevated. Because this is very important, you can prevent further damage in this patient. Mr. Ames, Wilsonian vital signs deteriorate further. Next hour, cardiac monitoring showed premature ventricular ectopics. First tachycardia, heart rate is 148. Intubation was done. Mechanical positive pressure ventilation started in this patient. He became more confused and disoriented. ECG did not show any signs of arrhythmias or any ischemia. Sudden confusion and premature ventricular contraction in this particular patient suggest more hypoxia or sepsis or both. That is, he has inadequate cerebral perfusion. This is a sign the patient's cardiopulmonary system is failing. So mind you, whenever a patient is more confused, worsening signs, possibility of cerebral perfusion inadequacy should be considered. Now, what are the monitors, ventilator parameters in this patient? Is ventilated with assist control or intermittent mandatory ventilator. Mechanical respiratory rate was 10 to 40. Tidal volume of 90 to 520, 6 to 8 ml into 65 kg. FiO2 to 100% since there was sign of hypoxia. Was placed on volume control in assist control mode with a backup ventilation of 12 per minute, tidal volume of 500 ml, FiO2 of 10, FiO2 of 1%. Initial auscultation revealed bilateral breath sounds with bronchial breathing over the right lower lobe. Mr. M, heart rate has come down to 120, respiratory rate come down to 70, blood pressure settled to 118 by 72, and temperature is still 101.3. Repeat chest X-ray shows that endotracheal tube was in place and there was no change in the right lower lobe infiltrate. Pulse catheter was in place. Urine output is 25 ml for the first hour. EVG after 20 minutes again shows pH 7.45. PaO2, see the PaO2 128, PCO2 36 and BACA was 28. This initial EVG shows a relative high PO2 with FiO2 1%, 1 is 100%. The oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve demonstrates that nearly as much as O2 is carried by blood with PaO2 of 60 mg as by blood with PaO2 greater than 100 millimeters of mercury. FiO2 of 1 puts the patient at risk of oxygen toxicity and it should be titrated down to achieve CO2 of approximately 90%, PaO2 of 60 to 65 millimeters of mercury. Since the PaO2 is monitored well, look at PaCO2, it is in the normal range. So no change. One of the important thing we should always keep in mind when you monitor a patient of respiratory rate, his heart rate, his blood pressure, it is very important to constantly keep an eye on urine output. Initial urine output in this patient was 25 ml per hour. That indicates he has got poor renal perfusion, which may be the cause of low relative blood volume. Maybe because he has fever, so there is a dehydration. So normal urine output is approximately 60 ml per hour. Keep in mind, at least 50 ml per hour. Fluid therapy should be given as an initial therapy for patients with low urine output or low blood pressure associated with sepsis. Evidence that fluids might not be appropriate would include where there is a JVP raised, where there is a gallop rhythm, third or fourth heart sounds. This is a sign of failure, heart failure, hepatojugular reflux, and associated peripheral edema. So these all indicates that patient is probably having heart failure. You have to be giving very careful fluid bolus or fluid therapy in these particular patients. Monitor CVP, accordingly you can give fluid. Next time is at high risk for nosocomial infection because of his compromised immune status, intubation, and mechanical ventilation. So careful hand washing by bedside clinicians or intensivist or ICU care person is very important to prevent spread of bacteria from one patient to another. Use of all sterile technique for suctioning the airway is very important. Over the next 24 hours, steadily improved. Temperature dropped to 99 degree Fahrenheit. His heart rate was normal, 90 per minute. Repeat CBC shows WBC count was 5400 with 62% segmented neutrophils and 18% bands. IV ceftriaxone and fluids were continued. Again, repeated VG shows that pH 7.43, which is normal, PCO2 pH, that is normal, and PO2 is 74, that is also desired, with FiO2 0.5. On day 3, Mr. M's weaning parameters were good. He was weaned from mechanical ventilation without any difficulty. Vital signs were normal, except the respiratory rate was 26, which is still higher side. He was removed. He tolerated spontaneous breathing very well. He was given oxygen by mask with FiO2 0.5 after extubation. Chest X-ray repeated on day 3 that showed right middle lobe infiltrates were less dense. He was switched on to nasal cannula at 3 liters per minute, which he tolerated well. Last 24 hours his temperature was normal. IV antibiotics were discontinued and oral antibiotic was started. Patient is sent home on day 5 with oral cefuroxime 500 mg twice a day. Follow-up visit with his physician was scheduled after a week. So now there is a criteria how to shift IV antibiotics to oral antibiotics. And how to know that? Look at the WBC count, which is returning towards the normal. Second, the two temperature readings taking 16 hours apart, normal. But patient's clinical condition has improved and the patient can take oral medications with adequate absorption. These are the 3 criteria when you want to shift from IV to oral switcher. And how will switch? So those who are on the quinolones with enhanced activity of Streptococcus pneumoniae, Leoflox, Oxiflox, or Gatiflox, or beta-lactams, cefodoxime, cefprozil, cefuroxime, amoxicillin, amoxiclavulinic acid, or macrolides like clarithromycin or azithromycin, or doxycycline or erythromycin. These are the doses You can go through it. On follow-up, Mr. M has various risk factors. First of all, positive smoking history. He has got COPD, possibly alcohol abuse, and of course malnutrition. Infiltrated bacterial pneumonia on the chest X-ray. It will take 2 weeks in a young patient, healthy patient, to clear. But it may take as long as 3 months to get clear in elderly patients with underlying lung disease. Yes, this patient should be followed with the chest X-ray for the documentation of complete resolution. He also at high risk of bronchogenic carcinoma. Chest X-ray is needed because of infiltrates may be caused by airway obstruction from bronchogenic carcinoma. In such cases, infiltrate not clear with an antibiotics. A non-resolving pneumonia requires further evaluation with the bronchoscopy. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please go through the slides and the presentation. If you have any queries, please ask freely. Send your queries on my email, which is given in the first slide. If you like these presentations, please subscribe this channel. Whenever you have any queries about any particular subject, especially internal medicine is concerned or diabetology is concerned, you can straightway write your queries to me. I will be able to answer as early as possible. Thank you. Have a good day.